Senator Joe Manchin is still standing in the way of the $3.5 trillion spending package. He insists it's too expensive. And it seems that Democratic leadership has received the message, signaling the price tag can be negotiated if it means passing the bill.
Somewhere between 1.5 and 3.5, there is $2 trillion. Those $2 trillion are there. And I think that there is a lot of room for people to sit down and negotiate. It may be when you're sitting around the table, you may not need $3.5 trillion to do what the president wants done and what the country needs done.
Now, just a quick reminder that Manchin's home state of West Virginia is the second poorest state in the union and dead last when it comes to the condition of the state's infrastructure. Manchin has been in elected office in some capacity for decades. So does his position really reflect what his constituents need or want? Joining me now is Stephen Smith, co-chair of West Virginia Can't Wait, and Bishop William Barber, co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign and author of We Are Called to Be a Movement. Thank you both very much for coming back to the Sunday show. Stephen, I'm going to start with you and read back to you something that Senator Manchin wrote in his op-ed in the Wall Street Journal this week. He wrote, "I have always said if I can't explain it, I can't vote for it. And I can't explain why my Democratic colleagues are rushing to spend $3.5 trillion. Stephen, when he says, if I can't explain it, I can't vote for it, he means if he can't explain it to you, to West Virginians. You respond to your senator.
Look, here's a secret that every West Virginian knows. Joe Manchin, Shelley Moore Capito, the rest of our congressional delegation, they do not represent the working people of West Virginia. They never have, they never will. That's because up until now, you don't win high office in West Virginia because you serve the people. You win high office in West Virginia because you serve Exxon, because you serve out-of-state landowners, bankers, and corporate lawyers. That's who he's checking in with. The only language they understand is power. And so the only hope we have on the ground of persuading these establishment politicians is to threaten to replace them. And so that's what we're doing. The threat must be credible, permanent, fearless, and most important, homegrown. And so with every candidate we recruit, every local leader and organizer we train, that threat grows. And we can't do it alone. My number is 304-610-6512. People can find us online. But this is what's going on. He is lying when he says he cares what we, the voters, think. He never has.
You know, Bishop Barber, we put it up on the screen in the intro, but I want to put it up again, the stats from West Virginia. First in the nation in opioid use, first in deaths per capita, second in poverty, second in obesity, 45th in education, 47th in vaccination, and again, 50th in infrastructure. You've been talking about basically all of these issues, Bishop Barber, for probably forever, but certainly for as long as I've known you. Your message to both Senator Manchin, but also the people of West Virginia, given these stats.
Well, first of all, Senator Manchin, I'm glad my brother said it, is just lying. 50% of the children are poor in West Virginia. 42% of white people are poor and low wealth in West Virginia. People from West Virginia, our Poor People's Campaign, has said he does not represent them. You talk to moms in Appalachia, you talk to the miners, people are struggling there. He's trying to answer the Chamber of Commerce and Exxon. There are 350,000 West Virginians that make less than $15 an hour, and yet he voted against raising the minimum wage. 46.7% of the census tracts in West Virginia can't even afford water, and now he's trying to stop the Build Back Better plan that would actually address poverty, address many of the people who were the worst hit during COVID, would address climate change. But, you know, people like Clyburn should be ashamed of himself as well. Not only do we need $3.5 trillion, we need more than that. The Economic Policy Institute says we need $10 trillion over 10 years, and we've already spent $21 trillion in war over the last 20 years. So this man is hurting West Virginia, but he's hurting America, Manchin is. $15 minimum wage would have lifted, Jonathan, 32 million people out of low-wage jobs and put them into a better place. So he's blocking what would hurt people. He only help people. He only wants to answer to his Republican friends. And then on top of that, lastly, he's pushing voter suppression that in West Virginia will hurt minors and poor folk and white people mostly, because there's no black people hardly in West Virginia. So he's a part of the demolition crew of this democracy, and if he succeeds, he and anybody who joins with him, Clyburn or anybody that joins that, will be a part of destroying this democracy.
You know, it seems like folks on Capitol Hill are losing patience with Senator Manchin, his colleagues. I'm going to play sound from two of them, Katie Porter and then Debbie Dingell. Have a listen.
We're going to generate the revenue to pay for these things. I have the will to do it. The question is, does Senator Manchin, or is he more concerned about his corporate donors, including large corporations, the oil and gas industry, the big pharmaceutical industry, and others who are getting away with paying nothing under our current tax system?
First of all, there are a lot of people that think that there's more than one senator from West Virginia that represents the country, and there are a lot of other voices that need to be heard on. And I love Joe Manchin. He's a good friend, but you know, there are 435 members of the House that also have a right to have a voice, and West Virginia is not the only state in the country.
And so, Stephen, more to the point from Katie Porter, I'm just wondering, is that impatience that we are hearing from both of those members being reflected in what you're hearing in West Virginia? And do West Virginians share that same or articulate that same criticism of Senator Manchin that Katie Porter articulated?
Yes. I mean, I think the thing in West Virginia, though, is this is nothing new. It's what we've seen for 150 years, a government that doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the people at the top. You know, people will say nothing can change, that this is somehow the fault of West Virginia voters, that Senator Manchin is the best we can hope for, that West Virginians should be grateful for the boot on our necks because it's blue instead of red. The stakes are too high, Jonathan. There is pain and death everywhere in West Virginia right now. There's a reason we call our movement West Virginia Can't Wait. In my hometown, we're losing somebody every 2 days to overdose. We're in the middle of the nation's most concerning HIV outbreak because our government, Democrats and Republicans, have criminalized harm reduction, suicide, poverty, COVID. Death is everywhere. And most of us, we look at that death and we try to stop it. We try to heal it. Senator Manchin, Senator Capito, the congressional leaders in West Virginia, they see that death and they try to profit off of it. That's the difference. Yeah. It's not left versus right in West Virginia. It's the people at the bottom who are dying and the people at the top who are profiting off of that death. We can't wait for things to change. And impatience is a kind word for what we're feeling here.
And we have run out of time, Bishop Barber, but you are a frequent guest on the show, so I'm going to have you back to have you say more of your piece. Stephen Smith, Bishop William Barber, thank you both very much for coming back to this.